Aloha and welcome to the Path of Me podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I wanted to create a sacred space for soul to soul conversations with people sharing their light through their passion, power, and purpose. Thank you all so much for being here. Let me introduce my next amazing podcast guest. Hey everyone! Welcome to the Path of Me. Today's guest is the lovely Lois Barrett, who happens to be the spouse of one of my prior guests, Stephen Barrett. And she has such an impressive resume. I'm gonna have to read some of it because I couldn't memorize it all. She's a health coach, speaker, author, and publisher. She was the editor and publisher of Self Health Network magazine in the 90s. She is certified in transformational breath and does a lot of different breath work kinds of sessions to support your journey. She's an Amen Clinic's brain health coach, uh, studied fire walking, which sounds really fascinating to me, EFT. Um, she's the author of Maven and the Magic Buttons, which empowers elementary students to choose love over fear. And I love that. And she has, and just so much more. I mean, I could just go on and on, but welcome, Lois. Thank you for joining me. I hope I didn't leave too much out.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure.
Mm.
I'm so curious. I think as a healer, which you obviously are, I'd like to learn a little bit about when your journey began for you.
That's a good question. So, yeah, I was a junior in high school, and I was on the first day of school. I'm sitting there in Miss Little's general chemistry class, and I had been taking all the gut classes, all the easy classes, and getting A's, and it was easy peasy. And that day, I sat there and I looked at this general chemistry class, and my best friend was sitting right next to me. And something inside me went, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And I just turned to my best friend. I said, I'm out of here. And I raised my hand and I said, I'm leaving and I won't be back. I'm going
Bold and brave.
class. I know, right? I'm leaving this class. I won't be back. And my best friend went, and I just walked down to the guidance counselor's office, and I walked in and I said, what do I have to do to go to college? I want to be a psychologist. And there's this part of me watching going, what the heck is
Oh
going
my
on?
goodness. That was interesting.
Yeah, and so I I engaged in all of the honors classes. Like I just changed everything up. I went from all the gut classes to all the honors
Oh my
classes.
goodness. What a shock.
I know. And I had the best. It was like, some people talk about walk-ins. I don't really know, but it sort of felt like in hindsight, it kind of feels like maybe that was what was happening. Like my real soul was stepping in and saying, okay, time to get this,
Right, we're going to get serious and
this
you're going to
journey.
stop
Yeah,
cruising and you're
right.
actually going to have a direction here. She took
Exactly.
the reins. She took the
Yeah.
steering wheel.
Something major happened there. And that was the beginning of me sort of taking life and myself seriously in a good way. And I loved it. I had the best year of
Oh,
my high school. I had all these great teachers. Things changed. I got into the senior class play the following year, and I don't know. I just woke up,
something
and
unlocked inside of you, I think. When we're aligned, I find that just it seems that the universe just starts to deliver the things that we need, the
yeah,
next step and the next step,
yeah.
and we don't have to try too hard to
Yeah,
find it because it's just we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, right?
yeah, yeah. And it was just such an interesting occurrence. And yeah, and then when I was in my 20s, I actually had a boyfriend who took me to a place up in New Hampshire called the Earth Star Center for a massage. And I ended up going to my first rebirthing breathwork weekend up there. And that shifted things again. It was just like, wow, I healed a past life that I had had with a previous boyfriend during that weekend. It was just all kinds of stuff. And my eyes just got wide open. And I just started on my my journey of inner healing, and I became a kind of a workshop junkie.
Well, I think that's beautiful. I think it's a definitely a tool that helps so many, and now you're on the other side of it where you're offering
Yeah.
workshops and healing to others. So I think there's so many things that we're not even aware of
Mm.
until we're introduced, and those introductions seem to come right on time. You have to be kind of ready and receptive, right?
Right.
To begin
Right.
that healing process and to
Yeah.
start doing that inner work. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that was a very powerful catalyst for you.
It was. And then I started, I remember being at a breath work group, like I don't know if it was just an afternoon or whatever we were doing. I studied with a number of different breath schools. I can't remember which one this was, but I remember really clearly seeing a flyer on the wall, and it was about a firewalking workshop. And I just got this feeling of, like, oh wow, fear, as well as, wow, well, there must be something really true to this, or they wouldn't be doing a workshop. So there was like this excitement as well as this fear. And so I said, I'm going to that.
Was it just a like a 4 hour workshop or a 1 day kind of thing?
Yeah, it was a three to 4 hour workshop. Yeah, a guy named Michael Sky, who I ended up studying with quite a lot. And he also had written a book. He wrote a book called, I think it's just called Breathing. I can't remember exactly. It's been, 40 years now. But yeah, and he and his wife were doing these wonderful long-term workshops called, what were they called? Oh man, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was about healing the body. It was something about the body, and it was all about body, mind, and soul. And we did a lot of sweats and a lot of fire walking and a lot of other
How
processes
did
to
that impact you?
the fire walking, you
I
mean,
mean,
or
just all of it.
uh,
What were you finding as you were navigating that journey through these,
mm,
tools and modalities?
yeah, it changed my whole awareness of life and what it was, like, and what the world was. It turned it into, it took it from something that was just, I don't know, an exterior experience to an interior experience, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. So I mean, the most powerful experience of my life so far. Well,
Wow.
maybe not so far, but the most powerful experience of my life um was a firewalking experience where I got to experience that all of the universe is inside of me. You know what I mean? Like that we're
Mhm.
all that it's all one. And there was a moment when I was actually burning myself, burning my foot. I was walking on hot coals, and I got a third-degree burn right on the arch of my foot. And as I was burning myself, I really got that I was burning myself. The fire was me, as well as the sky that I suddenly saw as like all of me. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe, but I just felt oneness with the universe. I guess that's a good way to
Sounds
put
really
it.
powerful.
It's amazing. And I can remember it right now like it was yesterday. And so that's been, that was a major turning point for me to really recognize that I was that connected with the source of all of it. And I don't remember it. And believe me, I forget from time to time.
I
Like
think
I'm
it's really interesting that there are so many out there, but I think so many people are awakening to this knowing, this
mm,
inner connection now
yeah.
that maybe wasn't available before because maybe the frequency on planet didn't really support connection. There was a lot of density here. There was a lot of um, adversity,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
and recently I feel so much more optimistic about the direction for humanity,
Good. Yeah.
despite the realities that are playing out, which I believe really are part of this process of deconstruction and
Mm,
reconstruction of a new paradigm.
yeah.
And I think your services are so valuable right now because there's such a need for people to release things
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
people carry so much and it's so heavy.
Absolutely. It's just amazing. I mean, I think many people are still carrying lives upon lives upon
Lifetimes,
of,
lifetimes of trauma
yeah,
and
and
density
emotional.
and
Yeah.
weight. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about how I've never done breath work,
Hmm.
how that works.
So, yeah, good question. So the question is, where do I begin? um, but so basically, when we're children, so this is the this lifetime version of it. When we are children, we are often shunned when we are expressing
Mhm,
unpleasant emotions, right?
mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
I bet every one of your of our listeners right now has heard this or seen this. Don't cry or I'll give you something to really cry about. You want the back of my hand, right?
Right, right.
Maybe they've got different expressions these days, right? Because the language changes along the way. But basically, for most of us, when we were little, as soon as we could talk, we were told, use your words, not your, stop crying, right? And so what that did was that made us need to hold our breath in order to stop those emotions from coming up. Because breath is a way of processing emotion.
Right.
That's what it does on the emotional and spiritual level, right?
Mhm.
And and so as a child, when you desperately need the approval of your parents or whoever's in charge of your life and keeping you alive,
Right.
you must comply in order to be safe. So we very quickly learn, depending on our family, because there are varying degrees of this. There are very abusive families and there are very kind and gentle families. And just about all of them, most of the parents weren't able to help their kids process their emotions because they were told it when they were kids and they were told it
I
when they
mean,
were
it's just a cycle that repeats, right? We
right,
repeat what we learn and know.
right, until we stop doing that and change, right?
Right,
Something else.
right,
But so as children, we very quickly learn how to restrict our breathing at the slightest sign of stress. Because if we don't, we might cry. We'll cry or we'll get angry or we'll express our feelings in ways that our parents don't approve of, and that's dangerous to us as a child. So this becomes a lifelong pattern and it gets ingrained in our musculature as well as in our subconscious mind. Don't you dare say you're angry. Don't you dare cry, even, right? And boys get that more than girls, right? Don't cry.
Mm.
Girls get more, don't you dare get angry at me. Don't you say no to me, right?
Yeah, so much repressed emotion, right?
Yeah, we have to repress it, exactly. And so the transformational breath work that I primarily use and that I'm certified in is all about releasing the stored up, repressed emotions and reprogramming our subconscious mind ultimately so that we can breathe and relax at the slightest sign of stress, giving our brains and our bodies the oxygen and the resources, the energy that they need so that we can make good decisions versus what we're trained to do inadvertently, which is to shallow the breathing at the slightest sign of stress and tighten up,
Right, right,
batten down the hatches.
right.
And
It's a tool, right? It's a tool to allow people to be more in the flow energetically.
uh, energetically and physically, right? Because the ultimate flow is the flow of breath, right?
Hmm, hmm.
What keeps us alive. It's spirit.
Right,
I
right.
love, I don't know if you've heard of Andrew Weil, Dr. Andrew Weil.
No.
He's a he's not that famous now, but for a while he was very famous, big beard, and he taught a lot of breathing exercises, very famous. And I love what he says. I quote it a lot. He says, "Breath is the movement of spirit in the body." And
Beautiful.
he's an MD, so I love
Oh,
that.
wow. That's really
Yeah,
interesting that he has that perspective
yeah. He was
with
one of the first
medical training.
well-known. Yeah, he was one of the first really well-known holistic MDs. And yeah, so breath is the movement of spirit in the body. And if you think about, just be aware that the Latin word for breath is espiritus. So breath is spirit, right?
Right, it makes sense, right?
Right. And what is spirit but what powers us, right?
Hmm.
Think
Hmm.
about if you think about the idea of alcohol being called spirits, why do they call it spirits? Well, because they took wine and they condensed it down into the powerful part. They got rid of all the water, right? They they distilled it down into the powerful part, right? And they call it spirits because that's we all know ultimately, well, I don't know if we all know, but it's been known for eons that spirit is the power that moves through us, and it moves through us as breath. So if we can use our breath instead of just letting it happen, then we can actually become consciously connected to our spirit and use that power to achieve what we want to achieve, right? And of course, the more we can do that, the more fully we can live and really express our true mission or heart's desires or whatever you want to
It's
call it.
so important for us all who are stepping into our power and purpose right now
Mm,
to be able to heal these wounds and traumas that we've been carrying
yeah,
through whatever means feels aligned, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I think different things work for different people, and
absolutely.
everyone finds the thing right on
Mhm.
time. And then sometimes you outgrow that thing and you move on to the next thing because this is a process of expansion, right? And evolution. And
Yeah.
I'm sure as your frequency has been rising, your work is evolving with it.
I like to think,
So we always say, oh, what do you do? Well, I do this, but it's probably so much more.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And right. And the transformational breath is one tool. It's how I started my practice back in the nine late 90s. Um, and and yeah, and I've since learned EFT tapping, which is an amazing process as well. And it again helps to move energy through and helps you connect with God and all that. And but then there's lots of wonderful tools available for people these days, which I think is a big part of why, or maybe because of this major transition that you're talking about. Um,
So much is changing
yeah. Oh
for
yeah.
humanity, truly.
Mhm.
And I really feel people are being confronted with truth
Mm,
in a
mm,
very powerful way.
yeah.
And that is coming because there are higher frequencies that are on the planet. The frequency of the planet's raising, right? So
Mm,
it's becoming more difficult to hold on to things that are no longer aligned
yeah.
with
Yeah.
the true nature of who we are. And
Right.
like you were speaking to these strategies that we just develop, these survival strategies that we develop from such an early age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we carry those with us as tools
Mhm.
as we mature into adults. So we could be a 40-year-old man or a 55-year-old woman still relying on these strategies from childhood. And I feel very deeply and powerfully that they're no longer working for people.
Yeah.
And I
We
feel COVID The
Mhm.
COVID years were a very, very transformational time because people were confronted with themselves. They couldn't
Hmm.
numb themselves with busyness. They couldn't leave. They had to be very present at home with their spouse and children.
That's an interesting way to look at that, the whole lockdown thing. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I know that there were a lot of people who, who there were a lot more suicides and there were a lot more depression and there's a lot more negative consequences. But that's a good point that not having all of the distractions, although they still did have their games, on their screens, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Which are pretty powerful distractions. But yeah, I bet that's true that a lot of people did.
I think there's always so much more than we're aware of because we tend to just look at what's right in front of us in
Mhm.
terms of the experience.
Yeah, see what's obvious.
And
Yeah,
when we can step back and detach a little bit and get very present within ourselves, there's
yeah,
often a higher cosmic order to what's happening here on the planet
yeah,
and in our personal lives. And it
yeah.
feels so much like chaos and destruction. And it is a metaphor for what's happening within us. We're burning and transmuting and releasing.
Mhm.
It is kind of chaotic and destructive, but in a powerful way.
I just want to show you what I got for Christmas. This is
That is so perfect.
my nephew went shopping with my grandson and they got me this for Christmas. I love it.
I love it. I think every mom or grandma needs to have that on their refrigerator or their kitchen counter.
Yeah.
Love it. I love that you're able to offer not only your clients, but your family, because I think when we go through this kind of constant initiation and reconnection with our souls,
Mm-hmm.
we're able to show up with so much more compassion towards ourselves and love. And then from that place, respond in a more compassionate and kind way to
Yeah.
others, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I often lately, I have my grandchildren living with me, which is a real blessing. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah,
And at the same time, sometimes I go to myself, wow, I really feel for anybody who needs approval, like who still needs, like if I needed these kids to like me or love me, it would be
right.
really hard.
I mean, you can't be effective if that's what's driving you,
Mhm. Right,
right?
exactly.
If you're chasing the worthiness from anything external, whether it's your children, your family, your work,
Right.
we
Yeah,
have to know wwho we are and dial
absolutely.
in so powerfully to our own worthiness,
Hmm.
knowing, and self love. I know a lot of people participate in workshops, and I think they're wonderful. But this is a daily practice,
Hmm.
this journey of the soul. It's not a weekend warrior.
Right. A weekend can take you to a higher baseline, right? Can take you to another level of awareness, but then
Yeah.
you can't just sink back on the couch and turn on the
And then
TV.
just wait for the next one.
Yeah, and one of the things that I did on a daily basis was, well, I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but one of the things that I incorporated into my life, one of the principles was if I'm afraid of something that I know really isn't dangerous, a real
Mhm,
danger,
mhm.
then I go for it.
Wow, I love that.
Go do it. Just like, and that started with that firewalk thing. Just go do it. And it's worked because if you shy away from things that you're afraid of, things that trigger your fears that aren't real reality-based fears,
Mhm.
and yet you end up being afraid all the time. And I
It's
think that,
incredible how much fear holds people back,
yeah,
right? I mean, it's something so intangible. It's something that rarely comes to pass,
right.
but it holds people hostage so deeply.
Yeah.
And they say this is so cliche, but faith over fear.
Mm.
This really is about faith in yourself.
I'm so glad that you
It's,
brought that up.
yeah, it's about faith in your knowing and faith in your trust in your ability to move through whatever is challenging you. Because honestly, every single person has gotten here. You've survived every challenge. You are still standing. You are still going. But I really find
Mm.
that this isn't a faith in anything external to yourself.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about knowing you can find your way out of anything,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know that one of the things that really helped me, I think, and I think Stephen too, through the whole COVID thing was the show. Have you seen the show called The Chosen?
No, I didn't
Yeah,
watch that.
it's beautiful. I've never been a Bible thumper, and I'm still not. Um, but I've always, had an awareness of Jesus and his message and all. And The Chosen is a show, a series that really brings the life of Jesus to life in for modern times. And and I just really I feel like it really helped me to move to another level through the whole COVID thing because it helped
No.
me to with courage about that, because there was a lot going on that I was aware of that wasn't on the up and up. And it was pretty scary.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, some of Jesus' messages have really helped with that, and just knowing that love is really the answer. I can't really.
It truly is. There's no higher vibration or frequency.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have seen love alchemize and create such miracles in my own life, and I'm not talking about receiving love, but being
Mm,
able to be love
yeah.
and offer compassion and understanding for the other, but also, more importantly, for myself. They think that's what love is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really not. It's really about how can I show up with an open heart, but also respect my own energy, my own truth, my own love for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so much more, right, than just external
Yeah,
compassion and kindness, right? It starts with us and how we are loving ourselves first, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. In fact, that reminds me of a man. I just started. One of my clients actually found this video of a man named Gabor Mate. Have
Oh,
you
I
ever?
love his work
Mm.
because he was obviously a medical doctor, but also went into like the deepest, darkest areas of addiction
Yeah.
and worked with these clients on a daily basis who had been through unspeakable traumas and just
Mhm.
um, his work is so powerful. He was a product of the Holocaust.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, what he's doing now about compassionate inquiry and it's just he's so credible because he's a doctor.
Well, the piece that brought him to mind was, you're talking about when some people will feel like love means bending over backwards and contorting themselves and ignoring themselves, etc. And he talks about in one of the videos that my client sent me, he talks about how he's done a lot of studies into this, and that certain diseases are caused by this type of pattern, these types of patterns, right? Where he talked about Lou Gehrig, and Lou Gehrig's disease
Mm.
is caused by pretty much the very pattern that Lou Gehrig had, which was, he would never miss a game and always just be super, super hard on himself, and yet bend over backwards for another player, let's say, who
Mhm.
needed support, and he would just go all out for somebody else, but not take care of himself. Even if he had broken bones, he would still play. And and in this society, in general, a lot of people think, oh, what a great
They
guy.
admire that, right? They celebrate it.
Right. And where does that principle, where does that value really come from? You
We
know?
we both know, you and I, as healers, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to
Yeah.
let you share that because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of our I call it the operating system, the subconscious mind and all the programs that get installed into us from society, from our cultures, from social engineering, which
I
is
think it's so
happening.
deeply embedded in our psyche that we're not even aware that it's there. But I know for myself, you know, based on my culture and my demographic and history, ancestral history and patterning, it was just a constant chasing of worthiness and love.
Mhm.
And when I look back at that version of myself, I think I just want to wrap my arms around her and tell her that she was always worthy,
Yeah.
at your core. And your core essence is light, it's God light encoded energy.
Yeah, and I
And
think
we
that's
are
what
all
Jesus,
worthy.
yeah, and I think that's what Jesus's message was as well. I love the way you just said that. I
Yeah.
think that was the reality of Jesus' message.
I found that sometimes instead of sometimes the mirror is almost too much for that person to bear
Mm, yeah,
because their perspective and perception of themselves is um, so low and so wounded that they're actually triggered by what you're reflecting back to them because their heart, the wounds and the traumas are so deep that they can't hold that kind of love for themselves. Have you
yeah,
found that in your practice?
yeah. Yeah, well, I would call that projection, right? We project onto others what we believe about ourselves or
Yeah.
about the world, and that with that learning all comes, at a very early age, and that forms the foundation, and then it just keeps, the subconscious mind loves to prove itself right.
I always say, our ego is running with scissors like all the time.
Yeah. And one thing that you said just a moment ago ties in with this in a way I'd like to share. You said that you have a part of it. I'll use the language that I use. You have a part of you, a little girl inside who really just needs to be held and loved. And 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 I've recently started working with internal family systems, which is a
Wow.
really beautiful. I've
Oh
had
my
such
gosh. I
great.
can't imagine.
It's just wonderful, and that's basically what we're doing is we're saying with this process, we're saying, okay, we don't just have one ego. We have a variety, an entire family inside of us of younger beings who have come into beingness in
Mhm,
order to protect the real the real us
mhm,
from all of the its perceived threats, right? So when someone goes through a big trauma, a part of them splits off and tries to, in a sense, and tries to protect, tries to take on, let's say, all of the pain of this particular experience and protect the actual being, right? Your soul. Anyway, it's just the way to heal, a good way to heal that is through doing just what you were talking about a minute ago, you know, recognizing that younger being inside that part of your ego.
mhm,
It's a construct of this world, not where it's of this world, right? Which our soul is not,
mhm.
right? We're just in this world.
Right.
These parts of us need healing, and they need to be, and they can be healed by recognizing their separateness, their
Oh,
belief in,
yes, for
and
sure.
bringing them back into the whole being. Does that make sense? Like
It absolutely does. And I actually was writing about this, in my newsletter. The word that was really forward for me this month was integration.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was about, 2024 was so challenging for so many people as they were confronted with aspects of themselves
Mm.
that they didn't like or that they've been numbing or avoiding. I mean, we've just reached a threshold, I believe, where we are all being confronted by some of our deepest wounds and false beliefs about ourselves, right? Just all of it, right? And there's so much armor over the heart of
Mm.
everyone. People are just armored up from all of those things you're talking about, just layer after layer after layer. But there comes a point in our process after we kind of unpack it all where we have to just really acknowledge and love that aspect of ourselves and integrate it in. It's not really about getting rid of it, which
Mhm.
people kind of feel like I'm going to just heal it
Yeah.
and be done with it. And I'm just never going to look at it. I'm going to shut this door. I never have to confront that again.
Yeah.
But that was truly an aspect of yourself and your journey here. And we have to integrate every piece, even the hardest, most difficult. In fact, those are the most important, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the belief, the belief that we're separate is, is, I'm going to say it, the original sin. And the word sin or seen in Spanish, it means without,
Right.
seen, without. And sin is the belief that we are without.
Right. When in
Right.
fact we're whole and complete always.
Right.
It's just about embodying and embracing all of us, right?
Yeah. So the real problem, let's say, that that's holding people back is that belief that they're not good enough. They're not, they're outside looking in, right? They're always left out. They're all these beliefs about separateness that have us feeling unworthy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so to just love, like, and some people will say, well, how can I love that part of myself? Or how can I accept this? If I accept this about myself, then I'll just keep doing it. Or I'll just keep, if I just, if I love it, that means I'm gonna, do these awful things still, right? Not so, because real love is not about, oh, I love that cake. It's not that kind of love. It's unconditional acceptance with gratitude. We need
Exactly.
to,
Exactly. It
yeah.
totally is. And I feel also that a big part of this in the healing of ourselves is releasing the judgment
Mm, yes.
and expectation we have around everything,
Mhm.
around how things are supposed to unfold, how people need to respond and react to us.
What we should be doing, right?
All of it, right? And I always say fear and control go hand in hand, like peanut butter and jelly. They just fear and control are like besties. So the more you're trying to control everybody and yourself, and people just have everything so these women, right? I'm one of them, and I can speak to it personally, where you are just so dialed in and so perfect, and you are just checking the boxes, and that's not really serving you. I couldn't even see it, and it took that was a lot of therapy and like healing to acknowledge all of that. I just
Like be
think it's so
a
important for us
human
to be
doing.
so kind to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of being human doings,
Yes.
beings, right? To just be. Mm.
Yeah. Lois, do you have a website? Like, how do people find you if they want to connect? And
I have a couple of websites actually.
or what's
One,
the best way for people to reach you, I guess?
probably the best way is to go to my website, the main website now. It's the more recent one, and it's loisgrasso.com. Before I married Stephen, I had been divorced for quite some time, but my last name was Grasso, and it was well known in this state. I was well known in this state, and so I didn't change my name right away, and I am not changing my domain name yet. I haven't yet, but
I mean, you've lasted this long. I think you should just keep going with it.
no, I'm best known as Lois Grasso. But anyway, so Lois Grasso, LoisGrasso.com is my primary e website now. And I also have one that's oxygenesis.org. I created a nonprofit a while back called the Oxygenesis Institute, and that's the website for it. So
Tell me about that.
it's a combination of oxygen and genesis, because oxygen, right, is the physiological, biological aspect of life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And genesis was the spiritual, God breathed life into the nostril of man, right?
Right. Tell me about your nonprofit and your passion behind it.
Oh, well, so back in the early to mid 2000s, I had um, published and edited and sort of ghost wrote the book on transformational breath by Judith Kravitz, who founded transformational breathing. And as I was going through that process of writing and learning more to write more and all, I realized that I wanted to, and I was practicing as a breath worker and developing my own approaches to, I decided that I was going to create a new brand of breath work, oxygenesis breathing.
Wow.
And I worked on that for a while and created the nonprofit, which funded and sponsored the cruises. Created a few cruises, as you mentioned in my bio, and a number of week-long, I call them transformational vacationals, just
I love it.
retreats. Because what we would do, the reason it was that way is we would take the morning for 3 hours, we would do breathing or tapping or root processing, a workshop basically, and then we'd go play the rest of the day in Jamaica or York Beach, Maine, or wherever. And so um, so the Oxygenesis Institute was the force behind that, or the organization behind all of that. And I never did really get oxygenesis breathing off the ground that well, because I just decided to sort of stick with Judith Kravitz's
Method.
transformational breath, and she didn't want me to do both.
I can understand that, right?
So I decided to support her organization. I got to train. I trained as a trainer, and then developed a couple of my own approaches to things. And I just decided to drop the oxygenesis breath and just join forces with her. So yeah, um, but the organization still exists. It's just not very active.
Right, right. Well, I just want to thank you for all you're doing to support others on your journey. I know everyone who works with you
Hmm.
experiences some powerful healings. So thank you for being here at this, pivotal time and for being available to support the journey of so many. And I love your focus on also helping these families,
Hmm.
as they navigate forward.
Yeah, the Connecticut Alliance of Foster and Adoptive Families. I got motivated to help them after I took restorative justice training back in the 2017, as well as school climate trainer. I'm a school climate trainer, and I found that um, what motivated me was not to do that was not having. I didn't have my own grandchildren in my life for quite a time. It's a long story. I won't get into it,
Right.
um, but it made it. I had all this love for them to
Oh,
give, and I didn't have them to give it to. So I started giving it to other children, and as well as being motivated to help foster.
that's so beautiful.
So I teach them. Thank you. So I teach them breathing and how to shift their emotions out of negative, uncomfortable emotions into more positive emotions using
What a gift that
yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah,
so needed for children, right? To have
it
those tools.
really is. It's so important. And if they can learn something simple like tapping and breathing at an early age, then there's so much more that they can
We're
do.
doing that with our granddaughter. She's 2.5.
Oh,
And she already starts, when she starts getting upset, she'll start deep breathing to try and self-regulate herself.
Right.
And I'm just blown away by that, because she's so little.
Yeah.
But I wish I had been more conscious as a
Mhm.
parent. Of course, now I'm a very different person,
Yeah. Yeah.
not raising, but being very involved in this little darling's life. And it's incredible that they're starting so young too.
Mhm. I know.
She's very self-aware of what
Yeah.
she needs. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I love it. And also to be able to also offer a safe space for her to feel her feelings,
Absolutely.
which I couldn't do for my children because I had my own wounds and traumas, right, at the time. But I believe in the perfection and the unfolding.
Mhm.
Everybody gets what they need, where it's all just so contracted before we even get here. But it's so beautiful to have that opportunity to
Yeah.
hold her and say, it's okay to feel what you need to feel. You can be
Yeah.
mad, you can cry.
Yeah. You know what I used to do with my granddaughter, and it's based on one of the modalities I created is called on the ball anger clearing. And
Yeah,
what
I
and
wanted to talk about that. Tell me a little bit about that.
well, you know those big exercise balls.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have one of those. I have a couple of them actually. And and what I do is when clients are breathing, or even sometimes when they're tapping, if they start to tap into some deep emotions, and I can see that they need to really express the way we were designed to express, which is through the throat and the fists and the feet, right? Right. If we're in fight or flight, we're either going to fight or we're going to run,
Right,
right? In which case
right.
our feet. Anyway, that's the natural way of handling or getting back into equilibrium, handling fear. So what I do, or what I used to do with my granddaughter, and what I do with clients is I'll hold this ball in front of them and let them and encourage them to punch it and yell and kick.
Wow, that is such a great release.
It is, and there's nothing like it. I mean, it's one thing, and it's wonderful if you can just say, boy, when you did that, I really felt angry, or I really feel angry right now. But eh, unless you have gotten out the years of stored up anger that's been stuffed
It must
down.
be so transformative, especially for men who are taught to just lock down.
Right, right. And it's interesting because at first people will just sort of go through the motions, right? But then, I'll be going, come on, like really.
You encourage them to really release the energy behind it. That's
And they say, I
powerful.
want to hear it. I want to see it. I want to hear it. How are you? I want to hear that feeling. And yeah, when they finally let go and just, yeah, let it rip. Whew,
Wow, I bet that's so powerful.
it is. It's amazing. So people can do this for themselves
I
too.
should get the ball to help her.
Yeah.
Let her just go crazy.
Yeah. And she's little enough probably that you could just hold the ball in front of her on the floor and let her punch it. But
Yeah, yeah.
my granddaughter, when she was younger, she didn't like to punch it. She wanted to run up to it and kick it.
Oh, wow.
She'd go across the room, and I'd say, yeah, now think about that. And she'd run towards me. I'd be holding the ball, and she'd kick the living daylights out of the
Oh
ball.
my gosh, Lois, that is so beautiful and powerful.
Right.
And
Yeah.
again, I just want to say what a gift you are.
Oh, thank you.
Truly, you've
Good.
helped so many people
Mm,
release so much if you really think about it, for your career. It's incredible.
Steve, I've been at it for 40 years, about maybe not quite.
How are we that old even? Right? I feel younger than 40. I'm almost 60. So,
Yeah, I'm 63. Yeah,
yeah.
I feel it though.
So, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. I've had such a wonderful time connecting.
My pleasure. Yeah, and thank you for all you do. I know that
Oh, thank you. It's just one day
been
at a
really,
time.
you've been really helpful with Stephen, and I'm really,
Oh, I've enjoyed our friendship so
yeah,
much. And,
and mutual. Yeah,
it's reciprocal. So I'm very grateful to have him in my life.
yeah.
But before we go, is there anything you'd like to offer the audience in terms of how to navigate these changes and maybe some of the
Hmm.
things that are coming up for them that are big and heavy and hard to confront in their lives, just some words of wisdom.
Hmm. Good question. Thank you. I think what I would suggest is dig deeper. Dig deeper. Follow your fears and let them, go down the rabbit hole, but really keep breathing and keep knowing that you're enough and that you have everything you need to get through it. Do you know what I mean? To get through whatever it is you're going to through. And that, boy, if I knew now, I mean, if I knew when I was 20 years old what I know now, it would have been such a more pleasant experience along the way, right?
Oh,
But at this,
yes.
but at the same time, there's perfection, like you said, there's perfection in the process, and it's really about the process,
Right.
right?
More than the outcome. It's
Yeah,
really about who are we becoming
yeah.
through
And
this, whatever this is, right? It's just,
what are we experiencing, and how let's look for the value in that instead
yeah.
of the burden in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's easier said than done a lot of times. So the key is
Absolutely.
don't beat yourself up for not being perfect at it, because you're just
Right.
right. I don't know if anyone ever gets perfect. Oh, gee whiz. I'm sorry. I thought I had shut off.
Okay. It's
Oh,
okay. But I
so
really think everybody knows the way for themselves. There are a million paths up the mountain, a million, as many as there are people on the planet.
yeah.
So everybody should just follow their own knowing and guide themselves forward. And of course, we're here to support people in whatever capacity we can on the journey.
Right. And a great way, one more thing, a great way to just begin that in a real easy way is just pay attention to your breathing.
Mhm.
Pay attention to your breathing and then use your breathing as a tool. Even if you don't know what's the exact right breathing exercise for this issue, don't even worry about it. Anytime that you are thinking about your breathing, you're expanding the flow of breath and you're doing yourself a favor. And then you can use your breathing instead of just letting it use you. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's so powerful right there.
Mm.
Yeah. Use
Really
your
good.
breathing.
Yeah. It's a powerful tool. People in China heal broken necks and all kinds of other diseases. Doctors at Beijing, hospital, the major hospitals, they use breathing to heal patients, their own breathing. One of my
Well, we
mentors,
are self-healing.
yes.
We can self-heal. And I think that's something that people, especially in the United States, forget
Mm,
because they want to go and get a pill
get a
and
pill.
fix it.
Quick fix. Yep.
But
Turn all
every physical thing, I think, has an emotional inception point.
yeah.
Every single thing in our bodies. It's
Mm,
all mind, body, and soul works synergistically as one. So you
absolutely.
can't just address one aspect of your life. You have to address all of it, right?
Right. And beautifully speaking, or beautiful, whatever, breath,
Yeah.
breath does it all, right? It feeds your cells oxygen, biology, right? Physical. It it clears your psyche of emotional baggage
Mm-hmm.
and processes emotions.
Mm-hmm.
and and it's your connection with spirit. It's your connection with God. A lot of people say they have a biological experience of God when they're doing the transformational
Wow,
breath.
that's incredible. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, thank you for being here today, Lois. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
gift. And to my audience, I hope you all have a beautiful day. Love yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and we will talk to you all next time. We'll see you later. Bye.